Delighted to be joined by our next guest, my Wednesday regular. That didn't sound right at all, did it? Brendan O'Neill, chief political writer of Spike. Brendan, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Jeremy, I'm good, thank you.
I don't think in all the months we've been talking, I've been this... I don't even know the right way to describe it to you. I've been open-mouthed about the pensioners. I've been horrified about what they've done to veterans and farmers. What happened just in the middle of the show was 45 minutes, as you know, before the end of Parliament's recess for Easter. They dropped plans for 5 local grooming gang inquiries, Labour, very quietly through Jess Phillips. 3 things I want to say to you. One, there was outrage in January when they refused an independent national inquiry. There was rumours at that point that it was politically motivated. There seems to be within the Labour Party, and we take Sir Trevor Phillips, not Jeremy Kyle, who said it has to be politically motivated. They are concerned about losing a certain vote, the Muslim vote. In fact, Jess Phillips, ironically, Wes Streeting nearly lost their seats. Jonathan Ashworth did, of course. Is that a reason? Is it a cover-up? That is appalling enough in itself, right? Jess Phillips... And I'm sorry, I'd say it to her face. I know Jess Phillips, and I've been quite impressed over the years about how she's fought for women's rights and victims of domestic violence. Absolute shame on her. There is not... I don't believe this is her decision, but she should have had at least the dignity and the intelligence to resign on the spot when asked by Yvette Cooper to put this through. This is a shameful way to treat young girls who have been raped and whose lives will be blighted forever. And I think it is possibly the lowest point of the last 10 months. And I don't believe, without going over the top, that the British public will ever, even more so than I don't believe they will ever forget this. I think it is unbelievably disgusting.
Yep. I can agree with everything you've just said. I think it is the final betrayal of the working class by the Labour Party. It is repulsive what they've done. They promised these 5 local inquiries and now they're backtracking on that and saying, well, we might do something else. We don't know. We'll see. As if it's not an important issue. As if this isn't the biggest scandal of the entire post-war era, which is that thousands of white working-class girls were raped by mostly Muslim men under the noses of local councils, under the noses of the police, under the noses of Labour politicians. They knew it was happening. They did nothing because they were more interested in preserving the ideology of multiculturalism rather than protecting working-class girls from rape. That's the biggest scandal of our era, and they are refusing to hold a national inquiry or even local inquiries. This is one of Labour's biggest ever moral errors.
Completely agree. Jess Phillips, tell me your thoughts. I was so... I don't know. And my mate texted me and said, she doesn't get a bye here, Jez. And he's right, Rob, in Newcastle. She doesn't get a bye. She should have resigned on principle. That woman stands up in Parliament every year and quite rightly reads out a list of women who have been, I think, killed through domestic violence and have been stalked and taken their own lives. Is she going to stand up and announce the names of these rape gangs victims? Because these girls, their lives will never be the same again. And I've heard nothing from all those women who fight for women's rights today, led by Jess Phillips. I've heard absolutely nothing. Like I've heard nothing from Badenoch and nothing from Farage. I would be all over this like a rash if I was a politician.
Jeremy, it's insane. If you think back to the Me Too era a few years ago, when lots of women in the media and in the film industry were talking about the experiences they had with horrible men, there were things like a man put his hand on a journalist's knee. That was literally on the front pages of the papers. It was on Newsnight. These were not exactly shocking violations. They were basically bad behaviour by Tory MPs and so on. And yet when working class girls were subjected to racist sexual assaults by gangs of Muslim men, it was hidden for years and years. It was not talked about. And
why? Just help me. Why? Is it a political cover-up? Is it fear of that vote? Is it that we don't know and there could be people involved who don't want to be outed and are in positions of power? What is it in your mind, Brendan?
It's a double whammy. It's firstly that they don't care about the victims. They see them as white trash. They see them as chavs. They see them as these lowly working class girls. Who cares about them? We're not interested. So they don't care about the victims. And they're worried about talking about who the perpetrators are. Because if you talk about the fact that these were mostly Pakistani men, then you will threaten to unravel the ideology of multiculturalism, the idea of diversity. And of course, as you say, it might knock Labour's vote amongst those constituencies. So it's that double whammy of contempt for white working class girls, which I'm afraid a lot of Labour politicians have, and fear of what will happen if they call out the Pakistani men.
Let me just make a point about let me just make a point, because a few people, not many, are saying it's not really fair, is it, to say, use the phrase Muslim. Just hear me out, just because this makes sense to me. I also would say there are millions and millions and millions of Muslim people in this country and across the world who will find this as repugnant as you and I do, which begs the bloody question, Brendan O'Neill, why don't the leaders of Muslims in the United Kingdom come out and say this is abhorrent as well? Surely that would make a major difference as well. Why don't they do that?
You're spot on. You know what? This is one of the things that's really gross about Labour's refusal to have an inquiry, because one of the reasons they're refusing it, as Trevor Phillips says, it's a political decision because they don't want to tick off Muslim voters. So they're expressing a kind of racial judgment of Muslim voters as well, because Labour is assuming that Muslims don't want us to call out grooming gangs or even possibly sympathise with grooming gangs. Like you, I don't accept that that's true. I think the vast majority of Muslims in this country are just hard-working people who want to live their lives, and they don't go around using girls. So Labour is exposing its own racism, actually. But then, you know, the thing is, in relation to Muslim leaders or self-elected Muslim leaders, so-called representatives of the Muslim community, the truth is they're not as representative as they let on. And none of the Muslims I know think that these people represent them or are spokespeople.
Completely agree. Was in a car last night, a guy that drives me from the station, Muslim guy, and he's appalled. Absolutely appalled. Here's an interesting one. Ivor, he says, Jez, read Jess Phillips' betrayal of the rape gang victims. Did you know, I bet you know this, Brendan, there is not one word about this from the BBC today or on their website. So apart from this station, the public don't even know this story. Oh my God, it drives me so mad. It's terrible, man.
It doesn't surprise me at all that the BBC will avoid this for as long as it possibly can. It just doesn't want to talk about this
Ryan's
issue.
just checked. Nothing on the BBC websites. Jess Phillips and the government saying no to rape gang inquiries. And apparently, according to the BBC, they don't give a toss about young girls who have been raped. Honestly, I can't. Do you know sometimes, Brendan, help me out, because you're more vociferous than me. Sometimes I come in on a Monday and I think, this week I'm not going to be angry, I'm not going to be depressed, I'm not going to be down about the state of this country. And by Wednesday night, I have to go home and drink a glass of wine. And I sit there and I think, is it me? It's not. This country is not a country I'm beginning to recognise, if you want me to be honest.
I think a lot of people feel the exact same way and are probably going home and having a glass of wine or a glass of beer and drowning their sorrows. And this is one example. This is a story that will make people do that, because people feel so strongly that the political establishment just doesn't listen to them or even like them very much. And, you know, you talk about Jess Phillips. The thing about Jess Phillips that struck me in the Commons debate yesterday was the way she shuffled about in her seat and looked irritated when Katie Lamb from the Conservative bench
Great job, by the way, Katie Lamb. Great job.
She was fantastic, and she spelled out so clearly what was happening here. She said this was a religiously aggravated, racially aggravated crime against white working class girls. And Jess Phillips was kind of wriggling around, looking vexed, looking annoyed. To me, that summed up the attitude of the entire Labour establishment. They just don't want people to talk about this issue.
Well, it's interesting. Tim, as you're speaking, he's just texted and gone, after watching Jess Phillips again, he said, I've made a point of watching it again. Looking at her body language, her tone of voice and her facial expression, I would say her speech was on orders from above. If that's the case, Tim, and everybody else, I would have expected the woman that I thought I knew, Jess Phillips, would have resigned on principle because she disagrees with this, rather than... And somebody, I think it was Isabel, said she's craved that job all her life, safeguarding minister. She has a chance to do the right thing and she shirked it. I can't have that. I can't have that at all. She would have received such credit if she'd walked away from a disgusting decision.
Jess Phillips has got a choice to make. She will now either be remembered as the woman who agreed that the government should bury these inquiries, or she can take a stand and say, listen, working class girls matter as much as every other girl.
Absolutely.
That's the choice she has. And at the moment, she's making the wrong choice.
The other couple of stories that I wanted to touch upon today, and I really, as ever, appreciate it. This Birmingham bin crisis, we were just talking to a new caller there, Marina, who was from Birmingham. And I've learned quite a bit about this. I used to work in Birmingham, but I always was raging against councils. And I found out the other day that in Birmingham, for example, it's very easy for people to go, we need more money. They had their money from central government. They invested in commercial property and lost half of the income. So, in fact, they gambled with the city's money, lost, and their answer is to increase council tax bills. The streets of Birmingham do have loads of rubbish. The services are on their backsides. And it does beg the question, because there's talk today that bin strikes in Birmingham could spread to 6 other areas of the country. Are these councils up to organising and, if you like, being in charge of their own finances? Because that is a blatant example, the Birmingham councils, of almost fraudulent behaviour, isn't it?
It's just such bad financial management. And you're absolutely right. You know, we often hear that local councils or hospitals or the NHS or whatever else it might be, the solution is they need more money. No, they need to stop wasting money on stupid stuff. They need to stop burning money on this property portfolio that they had in Birmingham, or on DEI initiatives, which they do in the NHS all the time, or employing the clipboard classes to do things that don't really need to be done. There is so much financial waste in the public sector. It is shocking. And Birmingham is the perfect example of that. The people of Birmingham are suffering real horrible sights with these bin bags everywhere. There are rats as big as cats roaming around, and it is entirely the local council's fault. Heads should roll over this.
It's really interesting, isn't it? And finally, before we go, did you hear about this Universal, bit of fun to finish, the new theme park that Universal are opening outside Bedford? Mike just got hold of this morning and thought he'd make a bit of fun out of it, because let's be perfectly honest, can you imagine Labour in charge of anything? Tim, I asked people the other day, said, imagine going to that theme park. If you left a bad review about the theme park on TripAdvisor, the police, 6 of them, would come round to your house and arrest you and put you in prison for 3 years for hurty words. Hold on. Labour's theme park, grand opening, sorry, cancelled, every bugger's working from home. That sort of sums it up, really, doesn't it?
It does, you know. I mean, 28,000 jobs is great. If that happens, I'll be very happy. If 28,000 people get good jobs. But, you know, I'm so sceptical of Labour's Britain right now, with good reason, that I'm not even sure this will come off. You know, Labour can't organise a thingy-me-bob in a brewery, you know, far less build this whole new theme park. But I did love the idea of your last caller, that one of the attractions should be Labour MPs with their backs turned to us so that we could hurl a few darts at them. That's the kind of activity that might perk people.
And to make you finish, Colin Tupman says he's in County Durham. The theme park, in my mind, should have a fortune teller. This is brilliant. Frankly, it'd be the easiest job in the world, because every person that visited, you get the same reaction. You're going to get a lot poorer and a lot colder, and you're going to have lies told to you forever. Brendan O'Neill from the Chief Political Writer of Spike, thank you so much indeed, my friend. Always good to have you on.